as people always say, you got the Pike County mating call, which is the pill bottle jingles. And, so, we always hang around in the parking lot, and, they, just to be honest,
trading pills for sex.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not Fabio by any means, but I never had a problem in that area. So, it done something for me.
Licensed attorney, award-winning writer, businessman, entrepreneur, and other over-the-top crap. It's Life and Law with Eugene Cisco Jr.
We have another edition of Real Life and Law, and I'm actually honored to have a guest with us today, Mr. Darrell McCoy. I've known Darrell for a while, and so today's topic is going to be addiction. A lot of you know, if you follow my page, you'll see that I spend some time talking about addiction and the struggles that those individuals have on their road to recovery and success. And so today, Darrell, I'll call him Darrell, but you can call him Mr. McCoy. You can call him Darrell, right?
You can call me whatever you want. I've been called worse.
All right, Darrell. So let's and we have Katie here too. Katie is the producer.
Hello.
So let's talk a little bit, Darrell, if you don't mind, just to give the audience a little introduction about who you are. And let's look forward, and then we'll go backwards. Let's go like at the present right now. So what do you do right now? What are you into now?
Well, I own the largest sports media outlet in Eastern Kentucky, Southern West Virginia. I got my start through Kentucky Sports Radio, which is a huge, the biggest radio station in Kentucky. In the early days, joined up with Coach David Jones, who played at UK, played in the NFL, and we teamed up to give a spotlight to the mountains that has never been given. The mountains has always been behind an 8 ball, but now with D&D Sports, we have a spotlight that nobody has ever had here in the mountains, and we're giving kids opportunities that I think a lot of people never dreamed that could come to mountain kids. So, right now, we're pushing, sometimes up to 3 million visits a week onto our Facebook alone. That's not counting our website and other social media platforms.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you all perform a wonderful service to the kids of Appalachia, Eastern Kentucky, and Southern West Virginia. So I remember when you first began this endeavor, you talked to me about how, as a legal matter, how you go about setting up your organization and your structure. I don't know if you recall that or not, but and I am so tickled that you have done what you've done, because we've all had some struggles, needless to say. So you have. Let me ask about the KSR. That's Kentucky Sports Radio, right?
Yep.
And that's Matt Jones and all the guys that hang out with him, right?
Yeah, Matt, Ryan, Drew, and Shannon.
Yeah, and I know you were. They had you on as kind of a standing guest. Is that right?
Yeah. I was kind of a character on there through calling in, and that's what gave me a name throughout the state, to where people around here care about what I have to say.
Yeah, and isn't that neat to see how you've grown this thing? It's almost like a baby. You've got a child, right? You've got some children.
It absolutely is. I got 2 of them, and this right here makes my 3rd.
When you create something, and I tell entrepreneurs all the time, when you create something, that's just the coolest damn thing in the world, because it's your baby. You have taken it from this little tiny embryo, and you have fed it and nourished it and watched it grow. It's just the coolest thing in the world. So kudos to you to get this thing off the ground. So let's go back a little bit. So I've known you for a while, and so I'm going to put it out there. You struggled with addiction most of your life. Is that fair to say?
Spent 17 years, from 17 to 34.
17 years ago, what was the timeline? What date are we looking at?
Let's see. I was 17 years old, so you're looking right around 2000.
And so, what was your addiction? What was your drug of choice, as they say? If we're in a group or if you're in individual counseling, someone's going to ask you what your drug of choice is.
It was pain pills. That was by far. That was my major addiction. Of course, done other stuff, cocaine and all that. And these drugs that's around today wasn't around then. So, I think a lot of it's just the time that we grew up in that, pain pills was the addiction.
Yeah, and that's the substance that plagues us all right now in the mountains. I mean, you probably still have old friends that are still at some level addicted or dependent on these kind of substances. Is that right?
Honestly, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I do have some friends that still struggle, but if you're gonna have any success, you normally got to cut them out.
Yeah, and I've said that many times. Sadly, I tell people that at some point, even the people you're with, it could be a wife, it could be a significant other, it could be your parents. At some point, you're going to have to reach a decision if you want to get sober. Yep. You got to get these people out of your life.
That honestly, a change of scenery was the biggest thing. And as with KSR and stuff, that gave me kind of a statewide spotlight, and then with D&D, it just. If you mess up, it's going to be front page of news. So, that was part of it. And then the biggest thing, you have to change your surroundings.
Well, what they say, people, places, and things.
Yep.
So I think there's something to be said about having an investment. And you talked about that a little bit with your entrepreneurial endeavors, the KSR that you're associated with. And also your own enterprise, D&D Sports. So you now have an investment, and what kind of, and you may have already answered it, but just to be clear, what kind of impact is having an investment? What has it done for you?
It is the purpose, this right here, feeds my family, which is my purpose, my wife and my kids. But, at the end of the day, like you said, this is my baby here. And, we have a lot of competition here in the mountains, and, people would love to see me screw up, and, other media outlets be able to put that out. So, my job every day is to make sure that I don't fall backwards and give them that opportunity.
And I'll talk a little bit about my own. I had issues with some alcohol back when I was in college and drank a lot up until I had my kidney transplant. And you've probably maybe heard me talk about that at some level. And I think it took me having kids first, but mostly getting involved in an arena to where I was accountable. I did alcohol and drug counseling. I had a clinic. So that was what I did. And I could not allow myself to become a hypocrite if I was still continuing to do the things I did when I was younger. And I think, so if you give someone enough time and they can develop an investment, then it kind of, don't the ball just kind of roll on itself when you get that way?
It does. It absolutely. If it wasn't for this right here, I would guarantee that I would end up slipping up, but I make sure that, there's when I tell you that this job right here, I work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day at least. And so, there's just no time for tomfoolery, as mountain folks would say. And, that's where, when I first, I first met you, I don't even know if you even remember, the first time that I ever met you was through being forced to go to one of your counseling services because of a shoplifting charge I picked up.
I actually do remember that. So and sometimes it's those little tiny things that forced treatment. I've read a lot of information on substance abuse and addiction. I've worked that field probably now since 1985, and forced treatment is often better than no treatment for sure. And it works about 30% of the time because for a new person, it opens their eyes. Sometimes it's that little kick in the ass that you need to kind of get you motivated.
Please excuse the interruption of this podcast episode. Due to technical difficulties, we were forced to use a backup of both Eugene's audio as well as video track. Due to this, the quality of both are quite low. However, we were unable to re-record this episode. The Real Life and Law podcast would like to apologize for this, and we hope that you can still enjoy the episode.
So, is that kind of what happened in your situation?
No, the time when, obviously, like I said, I went through your counseling by force of court, and, be honest with you, that had no impact at all, but, I'm sure we'll get to it, but your clinic actually did have an impact, but it's, I really, whenever I decided, I was blessed to pick up a shoplifting charge again after your counseling. And, I always had a lot of pull in Pike County. My family did. And, if I went to jail, I was out by the next morning, usually 3-4 hours later. And, it just happened a perfect storm. The judge we had pull with and my lawyer that I had pull with, both was on a 2-week vacation. So I had to clean out the hard way, laying on that concrete floor. It was supposed to be 8 people in a cell, and there was 24 people in there. So, I got lucky to get a spot on the concrete floor, and, the stuff that, just went through in there, and then at that time, I'd already, D&D hadn't, it was just getting started, but, the KSR thing, I knew then. I was like, that's all it takes is somebody to hear this or see this on a police blog or something, and then, I'm screwed.
So just so for the viewers out there and the listeners, when you talk about pull, as an old hillbilly, we're both hillbillies here.
Yeah.
So when we talk about pull, we're talking about connection.
That's it, yeah.
Right? And so you were fairly well connected in the political situation and the legal landscape in the area that you got in trouble. And then all of a sudden, those connections and those levers weren't there for you to push.
That's it. Yeah, and that was the biggest blessing I ever had in my life. And laid in there, got clean, and I knew then. And it was the day that I got out is whenever I come to your clinic, to where it actually had a huge impact.
Well, thank you. But even though we were just the vehicle, we provide the services, we provided information, but every client that's ever come through any clinic, not just ours, supplies the work. And I don't take any credit except for providing the facility, having staff there, and providing information and a roadmap. Give you a roadmap, and it's up to you all to work it, right? And so you worked your plan.
It was, as I'm sure you can remember in them early days. I wasn't living, even though at that point, it wasn't, my life had changed, like I was getting rid of that. But, the one of the biggest reasons, that started going is so, and, I'm sure the statute of limitations is up on it now, but, I would sell my Suboxone to get my pain pills, and you could tell, anybody that's smart can tell, because when people get aggravated that they can't get their medicine on time, that's normally not Suboxone. They need it for something else.
That's right.
So, but, y'all was pretty strict, and it ended up, in a matter of time, I came around. And so by the time that, I left there, then, it was, I was following the rules and, living life like I should.
And you was ready to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the important thing. You had picked up enough skills and enough confidence where you didn't need the medicine. It tickles me to death because it was medically assisted treatment. We used the medicine that you use. You said it earlier, it was Suboxone.
Yeah, I'm a strong proponent of it, and
it's a great recovery. It's a great recovery medicine.
It is.
It's probably one of the best things out
Yep.
there. So let's look back maybe even a little bit before that. How did you become addicted? What was some of the first things you did when you look back and analyze your journey? What are some of the things, if you can share with everybody, some of the things that you know now that you really weren't aware of then that caused you to get on the road that you're on? What were some of the things that if you had to break it down, if you give me 3 things, maybe 2, of things that you did that at the time you were doing it, you didn't really know, you were just out for fun, and now you know that those were big warning signs.
At the end of the day, I had one of my best friends, as you know, back in the day, people used to cruise the mall. And, my friend, he was graduated. I was still a senior. And he was doing the stuff. And, it went on for about 6 months. He'd aggravate me to do, hey, here, bust this up. Let me, try to get me to do it. And I wouldn't. And then one day I gave in, and I seen it's not going to kill you. And, it actually, you relax, you have a little bit more fun. And, and it was one of the big things too is, I was always involved in sports and, around, my teammates' families and stuff. And it was something that in the early days, they couldn't tell I was messed up on. So, that was one of the big things is, I had friends that smoked weed. They'd come in there. People knew they was hiring a kite, but pain pills, nerve pills, you could tell, but pain pills is something you could do and you could go on about your life and nobody know it. Well, you can do that for so long.
Right. I was going to say that's in the very early stages. You can hide it. And that's the thing about addiction, right? The substance. In the beginning, you have complete and total control over the substance generally.
You do. And, the other thing, it ended up becoming a social thing, as, I guess one of my other addictions, is I love women. And, as people always say, you got the Pike County mating call, which is the pill bottle jingles. And, so, we always hang around in the parking lot and, they, just to be honest,
trading pills for sex.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not Fabio by any means, but I never had a problem in that area. So, it done something for me.
And so I try to explain this to people, and you said it perfectly. In the beginning, it's fun.
Yeah.
You're out, and so the very first stage is you conducted the experiment. You probably had been confronted with the pills for a while, but you were a little leery about it. And then when you had that first encounter, you realized, like you said, I didn't die. And actually, I felt pretty good. And it allowed me to relax and do some of the things that I want to do. And so then you continued on for that next phase, which is recreational use, right?
That's it. I sit back and, as my job now, I feel awful, when I walk in some of the gyms because, actually one of the things when I was younger, I always had the passion for sports, but, I was always like, how many schools could I bust a pill up in, and that was just something that, it was just, you tried to get away with stuff and, and the recreational side of it, that was the fun days. And then the next phase is where it gets rough.
Yeah, and that would be where you start having a lot of negative consequences, right?
Yep.
Yeah, when
Dependency.
you start losing control over the substance, you get dependent on it. Then you really don't have any real friends at that point, do you? All of your real friends are gone.
That's it. A lot of people, they think they have all these friends, but at the end of the day, whenever you can stop getting pills, like, the stuff that I went through during it, stuff you'd never dream you would do. Like, stealing off your aunt, crawling, coming home, crawling on the floor, over to, while they're asleep, go through her purse, get her pills. And, it's just, and then once that gets cut off and you can't get them, you start seeing a different set of friends come in, try to use you for different reasons. And, so it's just like a revolving door of friends when you got it. But, it's just, which ones can use you in which ways is basically how it
That's a
is.
real loose term. When you're in an active addiction, the word friend is very loosely defined. I think one of my things is I always caution people, a friend isn't someone that when you lay down at night, you're afraid they're going to run through your pockets. Like, see, that's not a friend. But sadly, when you're in that phase of addiction, that's about what you have with you. Is people that want to use you for drugs, want you to buy drugs off of them, and those aren't friends.
And in today's world, like I said, I sit back and I think of how many people, that during that phase is still in my life. I do have, some of my high school friends that's been there the whole time, but the other ones are ones that actually, that I try to help out and now give them a job and try to mentor them into sobriety. And so, that's those are about the only ones that's still around from that time.
So when it comes to like your other relationships, at what point did you feel that you were ready to, or how did you finally get yourself shed of all of those people that were using in your world? How did you finally get rid of them? Or was it a gradual process?
Well, and if you don't mind, I definitely want to answer that. But I do want to hit on something. Is one thing that people, that a lot of addicts want to get clean. They do, but you get in circumstances like here I was having to live with my cousin. All right, I wanted more than anything to be clean, and to have a life and to have something, but at that time you're living with your cousin who has an addiction, him and his wife, and then you got to continue the process and you got to make sure you keep them high and you're around it. So it's hard to escape. It really is.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. You know, we get a lot of, if you look at my page, we have a good TikTok following, and you'll see people that will. Boy, Katie, we did a little clip, and Katie took a whole lot of crap about one of her positions on, I think it was doctors and prescription medicine, but a lot of people don't understand that an addicted person, you always make the choice initially. It's like, if you don't have sex, you're not ever going to get pregnant, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Never take that first pill. You'll never become an addict. That's an absolute fact. So we all, if we're involved in any kind of substance use, after a while, you are helpless. And people don't understand that. I never sat across the table from anyone with a substance abuse problem that said to me, Eugene, I was thinking back 20 years ago, I knew that this is what I wanted. I knew I wanted to lose my job. I knew I wanted to have all of my family members afraid of me. I knew that I was going to lose my wife. I never had anybody say to me, damn, I can't wait for all this bad shit to happen. I never had that. They were always helpless. They were looking for a way out. when they're at the end of that stage, it's they're helpless. Is that fair or not?
It absolutely is. I mean, like I said, I had nowhere to turn, nowhere to look. And then, the thing is, if you do get a break and get away from certain situations, then, but your mind ain't completely clear. So then you look into taking advantage of them situations. And, I mean, this is, people don't understand, the life that I lived. I mean, I went from, running from the U.S. Marshals to, I mean, shoplifting charges, breaking and entering, stuff that you never dreamed you would do. And now that you look back, I mean, it's not the person, it's the addiction.
It is, and a lot of people don't understand that, and hopefully we can shed a little light on what this process is like, because it affects so many people, people that you would never know. Like I would say there's probably people in your life that may not know the full depths of the issues that you've had.
Oh yeah. There's definitely, I still, yeah. I mean, my family, because my family went through it. That's one of the biggest regrets I ever had is my aunt and uncle that raised me. They never got to see this Darrell McCoy. They got to see the outcast, and that's one of my biggest regrets. And I try my best to I'm open with my kids and my wife, but around here it's just now getting to where I can tell my story and use it for positivity, because in a growing business you got to be careful with that stuff around here, because people use it against you.
And that's absolutely true. So on your road, do you have a couple of people? So we talked about how laying on that cold concrete floor over the Pike County Detention Center was a big wake-up call for you.
Mm-hmm.
So after you had that aha moment, like, I've got to change the way that I'm doing my business, after you had that, give me a couple of people. Who did you reach out to almost immediately to try to help give you some direction?
I mean, I didn't really reach out to anybody. I mean, that was the thing. In the early days of this, I mean, honestly, there's good and there bad things that come from it. But I mean, D&D, be honest, if it wasn't for me selling pills here and there, I mean, this company may would never got off the ground. And then when my life really changed is when my wife and my kids come into my life. That gave me, I mean, I all of a sudden I wanted, I was like, well, I would rather, instead of spending that $120 on an Opana, I would rather buy my son a pair of ball shoes, and that keeps you, going and keep you motivated. And, honestly, my wife, she's went and she's drugged me out of dope houses. And, I mean, if it wasn't for her stern and her seeing something in me, then I probably would never be here where I'm at today.
Well, so we go back to the accountability thing. You made yourself accountable, and you had something bigger than yourself, than your own ego and your own wants and needs to look out for, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely, I mean, that's the thing. When you got people depending on you, then, either you shrivel or you grow into a man.
We looked at some people and places and things. So let's talk. You mentioned your aunt and uncle, the big regret you had, that they never got to see you today and be successful. Give me one more person that you think about often, that maybe they're alive. Give me one live person that you know is around now that you are happy that they are here to see you turn a corner.
Well, when I sit here and think, I mean, I don't know because, like most of my family has moved off, and, like my mom, she lives in Ohio. And then, I got, some, what I call my brothers, their family basically raised me, which was Matt and, Mark Maynard. And they, both of them, I mean, Matt especially, I mean, he wanted so bad and tried, I could tell that my sobriety, affected him when we was younger, just because he hated to see me like that. And, so it does make me proud that he sees me as somebody now that not only is sober, but somebody that went and made something of themselves. And but it's the biggest thing, or like my former coaches, former basketball coaches that knew I went down that path. And the just my people, every day, my business partners, Thomas and David, just people that know, the struggles that I went through and where I've come. And that's probably the biggest thing because, right now, my family, about the only family I got left around here is, my family right here, my kids and my wife, but I do got a couple cousins in North Carolina that I grew up with, my aunt and uncle's kids that, it does make me proud that they get to see it.
Well, very good. And you got your work family too. So let me, I don't want to miss this opportunity. So when I asked you about the people around you that influenced you or helped you after you spent that night or those nights in jail and you detox, basically you detox, which if you've that the jail is the worst place in the world to detox.
I spent 14 days in there, and it was rough.
It's terrible. I tell people when you're detoxing, you have the plague of the three S's. You got the shits, the shakes, and the sweats, and they all don't come in that order, and sometimes they come on you all at once, and it's the worst thing in the world. So, but what you said was important because it is so hard to extricate yourself. When you were 17, your whole world was that way. You had a lot of family members that way. You probably didn't know anybody that was sober that you respected, other than your aunt and uncle. But when you're young, you don't look at these people that way. So you didn't have anybody in your world to give you any information or guidance about your sobriety. Is that fair?
That's it. All my cousins, had some kind of addiction. Even to you go to your basketball coaches. I mean, who knows? But I mean, I did know they drank. So there was some kind of addiction that everybody had. It's just so it makes you think that well, you just choose this path instead of the one they're on, and it's going to be okay.
I look at that like education. Like you take a kid that's never, everybody around them, everybody up their holler is not educated. They don't know how the hell to get educated because nobody else is there to show them or tell them what that process is like. So if you're mired up, eyeball deep into an addiction, you don't have anybody a lot of times to shepherd you through that, at least the initial stages. That's why it's important, I think, you really reach out to a facility or a clinic or something where you can, in the beginning, all you need is information.
Yeah, I just be honest with you. I don't know. What I don't know what. I know that if it wasn't for Suboxone, I would have never got clean. And I know a lot of rehabs consider, being on Suboxone not clean. I think that's absolutely false because, I went from, I know friends, the same friend I told you that got me, that gave me my first pill, he's been on Suboxone for like 12 years and now he's making $120,000 a year and, is a productive member of society. And, same case with myself. I just think that around here, and I'm sure Katie, you mentioned she took a hit. One of the biggest things is I think that it is prescribed the wrong way. I think that, it's something that you should be on and then weaned off, but, most people keep you on it around here.
And I think that happens a lot, but addiction is a mental barrier that we have to get. Once your body is clean, then it's all about changing the thinking and the thought process. And so sometimes a lot of people have been on it for years, but it's really a security blanket.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I'll be as open as I can. I'm still on it today, and but at the same time, there's days that I go by and I forget to take it.
But so let's look at that though. So if we believe, and I always, so I'll share this with everybody out there to have to be looking and listening. If you believe that substance abuse is a chronic disease, and we're all taught that now. Everyone knows to say that it's a chronic disease. So it is unlike diabetes. It is like diabetes. It is like any other chronic disease. I always liken it to diabetes. So if you're a chronic diabetic, I think it's the type B diabetes is the one that's chronic and lifelong. So if you're a diabetic and you require that insulin to help you live and to keep your sugar stable, one of the last things you're going to do is wake up to your granny and say, "Hey, Granny, I was thinking last night, I know you've been on this old insulin for a while. So how about let's just go on a picnic and leave that daggone insulin syringe at the house through. And not only we're going to leave that insulin because I really think you're cured. I don't think you need that medicine. We're going to have us a picnic. I'll make me some good old fried chicken. We'll have us some mashed potatoes. And then on the way back, I'm going to buy us a big old piece of cake." You wouldn't do that to your granny that was on insulin, would you?
No, you wouldn't. But I also come from the line is I hear a lot of people say, and I think you may have been one of the first people I ever heard say that addiction is a disease. Myself, I don't believe that. I think it's a choice, and now.
And I agree that we've got a hybrid here. I believe it's a choice in the beginning, but then I think once you undergo that transformation between doing it for fun and then being dependent on it and then psychologically addicted. So what I mean is, as a disease, when you talk about chronic diseases, they have certain markers, right? So it's lifelong. A chronic disease is generally progressive. That means it gets worse over time. And eventually, if you don't get treatment, you will die sooner or later. So those three markers, you can apply that to most cancers, most all cancers, and you can certainly put those three, if you get rid of the emotion, you can apply those same standards to addiction. Because if you don't...
I can agree with you on that.
So if you don't get treated, so if you just separate out all the emotion and you look at just those three markers, you've got a chronic disease.
It is, and it's something that I mean, I don't know. I guess I've always now that I'm clean and I live through life, and as a parent, I try to teach my son the right way to go about life, and so I guess a lot of it is where now I'm like, I'm not big on excuses, and I'm like, you got to be accountable for your own actions, and I probably wouldn't be the best counselor.
But so to follow that up, so my position a lot of times, and it has evolved. I'm telling you, it has evolved almost 180 degrees over the past 35 years. So if we know it's a chronic disease, then I honestly don't see a problem with medication. And that's what I look at all of those things. It's like me, I have a kidney transplant. I've had I've had two. I have to take medicine every day because I have chronic kidney disease. I take medicine every day to keep then I go into kidney failure. But there's another part which I think you've already done, and most everyone in good solid recovery has done. The medicine doesn't necessarily have to be a pill or a strip. The medicine can be your program. The medicine can be that thing that you do every day, that mindset when you wake up, when you remind yourself that you're going to be clean. To me, that's medicine also. Getting yourself into a routine. I believe that's medicine as well.
Yeah, and I say it, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I say, well, I mean, it should be, doctors should wean you off from it, but I also know this. I know that, there is days I go by that I forget to take it. There's a ton of days that it'll be 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I'll be like, I didn't take my medicine. But what that does, the thing that it does do for me is it ensures that, if I am back in my hometown and I run across the wrong people and they're like, hey, here, try this, try that. Well, it ensures to me that, well, I can't do that because it's going to make me sick or I'm not going to feel it. Or so, it does. There is a big reason why that, I guess you still on it.
Yeah. And because those people, they don't leave you alone.
No.
If you're in, they won't leave you alone.
The more success you make, the more they want to try to invade into your life. And I've got numerous messages that's just unanswered of friends that I know 100% that if I just respond to them, it's gonna open up a door that I don't want to go through. So I would love more than anything in my life. I got a son that's really good at basketball, and I would love to be able to take him back and let him play where I graduated from at Belfry. But at the end of the day, I know that that's not a healthy spot for me or my wife and our family. So, I can't go back home.
But that's okay, right? That's okay. And you have to be completely comfortable with that, okay?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I live in Prestonsburg now, and it's the best town I've ever lived in. I've lived in every big city in the mountains, just about it, and this is by far the best. And we've been blessed with. We don't have a ton, but we got everything we need and most of what we want.
So we're going to try to near the end here. Just a couple of things. I would like you to share with us if you had to point two or three things that you have done and that you do every day to maintain your sobriety, what would they be?
The biggest thing is you've got to have a routine. Whenever I was going through your facility, the biggest thing that helped me then was exercising, and KSR, Kentucky Sports Radio.
I forgot that you were starting to get into exercising at the clinic. I remember you going to me about that.
Yeah, if it wasn't for every day from 10 to 12, I would get up and I would go walk and then eventually start jogging a little bit. And, if it wasn't for them 2 hours every day, them 2 hours, if KSR, something happened and KSR didn't have a show that day, it got to where, I wouldn't exercise. And then if KSR didn't have a show that day, that was days that I would slip. Believe it or not, that little thing, exercising and that 2 hour show helped change my life. And then, the second thing, now that, I don't have time, really to exercise anymore. So, I've kind of replaced that with work. It's every day, all day long. I say I live in Prestonsburg, but I really just sleep here, and, my family, they never get to see me. I go, last 2 weeks, I went 4 days without seeing my kids. So, I try to keep going. A lot of it's for the business, but on the other side of it, it keeps me sober. And then the other thing that I do is, I just, I try to count my blessings. Whenever I was living with my cousin, or when I was hiding for 2-3 years from the U.S. Marshals, and when all them, I just dreamed of one day being able to take and put gas in my own car, being able to pay an electric bill, and my ultimate dream was to have kids. And my third thing is I try to count my blessings.
So every day you're always mindful of the things that you've had and the work you've put into it to get to where you're at.
Absolutely. It's it's hard work, and many times I want to give up. I do. It's much harder. I have no life really anymore. This job is my life, and but in return, I get to take care of my family, and I get to do something that that I always dreamed of doing.
Sure, you feel a hell of a lot better doing that than chasing down a pill.
Absolutely. I tell you, the thing that people don't realize, it's not, the people that do want to get clean, the biggest thing is they're scared of withdrawals. And, and back whenever I was addicted, nowadays there's help everywhere. Everywhere you go, insurance is a pay for help. And, but back when I was addicted, there was no help. You had to have, the people that got help was people that come from wealthy families that could afford to send them to rehabs and stuff like that. But nowadays, it's everywhere. But, I didn't like, the restless leg, being able to take that nasty taste in your mouth when you're going through withdrawals, living in the bathroom. And it was just, it was really rough. And there's not anything or any way that I'll ever go back to that life.
Well, good job, and I believe you. I think you've accumulated a bunch of success, and I think that just perpetuates itself. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with everybody out there that might be watching or listening? Do you have any one more thing that you might want to share with anybody that we haven't discussed?
We covered a ton of it. The biggest thing is, believe me, unless you change your surroundings, unless you take and cut people out of your life, and it may be people that you love, but if you really want to get sober, the biggest thing too is if I wouldn't have moved from our area, if I wouldn't have moved from Belfry, it would have never happened, and none of this would have happened. So that's the biggest thing. Change your friends and change your surroundings. You cannot keep going by that same house that you bought dope by every day. Eventually you will stop there. I did it in the early stages, in the early stages of my addiction. I'd go by my dope dealer's house, and, ever so often I'd swing in there, and, but you take and cut that stuff out of your life, then, everything else will take care of itself. But the biggest thing is get you a routine.
Good job. I think that's very important. So, Darrell, tell people one more time, so a couple things. Tell people where they can get hold of you and see some of your content. And, Katie and I will be in communication with you, and throw us a bone with some of those 3 million listeners, and let them know that you're going to be here and how they can see this broadcast. So tell everybody where they can reach you or where they can see you.
I absolutely will. This is something that I wanted to do for a long time. And in the early stages, I did go with Rex Chapman one time, and we went on a tour and done radio stations and told my story, but I never would tell it around here. So this is probably the most in depth that I've went to. But you can follow us at dndsports.com. That's our website. Our Facebook page, D&D Sports, is what everybody knows us for. We're about 50,000 strong on there. Then, you can each and every night, from Pee Wee all the way up to the pros, we're now doing college ball games. You can catch, we got Huntington Prep, #1 garden in the nation, that we're covering now every home game. You can catch all that on D&D. You can get us on TikTok, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. But main thing, I just want to let people know, if you're struggling through something like that, the door is always open. I'm not too big to help somebody.
Well, listen, Katie, did I miss anything? Do we have anything else to add?
I don't think so. As always, Eugene, you did an amazing job.
Oh, yeah. I'm a newbie at this. So, Darrell, again, thank you, man. I'm most appreciative for you coming on here and sharing your story, and I'm absolutely just proud that I've known you when, and I know you now. I consider you a friend, and I look up, I watch your Facebook stuff, and I read your articles. So, I just tickled to death for you, as we say here in the mountains. I'm just tickled to death.
Well, I'm appreciative that you was there in the early days. I'm appreciative that you was hard on me, because who knows where I would be if it wasn't for them a couple of years I spent at your clinic. I don't know that that had just as much to do with it. So I appreciate everything you do to help change lives here in the mountains, and I appreciate you and Katie for having me on.
All right, my man. Listen, as I tell everybody here